you very much. From Facebook to The Economist, two very different companies. So expect a slightly different perspective. I'm Jamie Credland. I look after all our marketing and strategy communications for The Economist worldwide, which means talking to advertisers, talking to clients, and developing our products to make sure that they're happy with them. Before we get started, how many of you know The Economist? Do people here? Good, that's very nice. How many of you know the Economist Espresso App? Aware of that at all? Couple of people. Okay, so it's relatively new. It's our daily news app that accompanies The Economist. But today's presentation really is not so much about the development of the espresso, although we'll talk about that. It's really about how you get a company that is very, very old and historically has been very slow moving to start innovating and to start moving into the mobile space and to do it faster. We've been talking this morning about VC funding, we've been talking about startups, we've been talking about getting in front of trends. Let me show you the original phase, A phase beta test of The Economist. There it is, it's beautiful. This was The Economist front page in 1843. We've changed a bit, but the principle is that, in fact, some things you see there are still the same now. So this was an English magazine that we printed at the time because we felt strongly about economic issues. It was a global magazine already 150 years ago. We were writing about trade between England and Brazil. We were always taking a global perspective. Obviously now, we've moved on a bit. Hopefully you guys know that. We have a very successful print magazine. We were one of the first people to create an iPad app. We have a mobile app as well. Those apps are very successful, they drive our business forward, but they're basically a recreation of the print edition. So it's a weekly issue. It's exactly the same as the print edition in a digital form. And don't get me wrong, we're very happy with these titles. We have 1.5 million people reading print every week. We have 750,000 people reading our app every week. But if you got anything from this morning's talks, it's tough times to be a publisher. It's a very difficult time to be working in publishing or indeed in advertising. I think it was Marvin this morning who gave his advice if you work in ad tech or media, and the advice was get out. So I'm going to see him afterwards with my CV and see if we can get a different job. But it's very tough times. We have The Guardian, they've fired a huge number of people. We have The Independent in the UK is closed. We have big digital-only news players like BuzzFeed and Mashable declaring profits much lower than they were expecting. And the reason for that is pretty clear. We have here the mix of advertising spend, print and magazine spend both down hugely. These are US figures. In Russia last year, print spending was down 29%. So this is a global phenomenon. And why are advertisers doing that? Well, that's pretty clear here in terms of the time spent. So the average American now spends more than 3 hours every day with their mobile device. Clearly, there is a limit, somebody was saying this morning, to the amount of content you can consume in one day. Something has to go, and then often that's print. Now, it's not all bad for print. I don't want to make it sound like that's a disaster. We still have plenty of people reading our print magazine, often at the weekend when they have some time. It's a lean-back experience. People enjoy reading a magazine, a high-quality print product. But increasingly, our readers look like this. And they're clearly not interested in print products. They're moving, they're expecting a different thing from their devices. They're expecting something different in their communication. So it's not just about putting The Economist onto that device, because we've done that, and that's great. We like that. But those guys running for the train in the morning, running from meeting to meeting, checking your phone in the middle of a conference, all this stuff, it's not just about recreating the weekly app. There has to be something else going, which is scary for a company that hasn't changed its product for 170 years, because we know we have to innovate, and we've been doing things the same way for a very long time, and we're quite good at doing it in one way. So those scary times, and we have to think about what we're doing. And then we said, okay, well, what about if we rephrase this and we look at it in a positive way? Wake up to the opportunity of mobile. Because actually, mobile, more than print ever did, and more than TV ever did, has a personal relationship with the user, with the reader, with the consumer, which is much more intimate than anything else in history. So the average consumer is now picking up their mobile phone 150 times every day. I think for a lot of people, it's more than 150 times. But yeah, it's a really close relationship. And Bank of America did this great study here. We like this. So this is, what do you do first in the morning when you wake up? I dare you to ask yourself this question. 35% of people in America reach for their smartphone first in the morning. That's 1 in 3. It's more than reach for a coffee. It's more than reach for a toothbrush. It's more than reach for their significant other. So more people check their phone before they say good morning to their husband or wife or boyfriend or girlfriend. That's kind of phenomenal. And that says, okay, there's a challenge there from a media business perspective. It's scary. There's all kinds of challenges. But never before has media had that kind of connection to people. That's exciting, right? So then the question for The Economist was, okay, how can we step into that space, take advantage of that relationship in a way that pushes our brand forward profitably? One of the key things at The Economist is we aren't VC funded. We don't do things just to gain market share. We have to make money. So it slows us down a little bit and we have to think a bit more about it. So what we did on one level was obvious. Okay, you have this happening to your audience. Right, we do a daily app. We do, instead of the weekly Economist, we do The Economist on a daily basis. Every day you wake up, hey, let's call it Espresso. Great name. You wake up with it. As you guys know, there's a lot of daily apps out there already. The Yahoo News app is really phenomenal, really very good. There's a lot of other competition. There's a lot of email newsletters. The Quartz newsletter, I recommend. There's a Media Redef newsletter that's amazing. There's a lot of competition out there. So we had to work out, well, okay, for The Economist, what does this mean? And to me, that's the more interesting question about product development. More than the technical aspect, it's how do you do product development that stays true to what you're all about, what your brand is about, what your product is about. So there we go. So we did a review, an internal review, because we realized no one entirely knew what The Economist was all about, what the company was about. And we spoke to people throughout the company. We spoke to editorial, we spoke to advertising, we spoke to sales. And we came up with these 5 pillars. This is what The Economist does. So there's 2 things to note here. One is, of course, for your companies and for your clients' companies, these pillars are different. This is unique to The Economist. And the second is, some of these are also true of our competitors. But for us, it's important that we're a guide to the world. It's important that we're finishable. You know, this principle that you don't just endlessly read The Economist. When you read it, when you finish it, you feel like, hey, I know something. I'm done and I feel equipped for the day. We stand for progress. We campaign for gay rights. We campaign for the legalization of drugs. We campaign for free trade around the world. We take a global perspective. We did all the way back in 1843. And the final point, which again is important in the situation of mobile development, we believe in quality products, and we believe that people have to pay for quality. We have some of the best journalists in the world working for us, we think. And if you want to read their stuff, you have to pay for it. And that's not a popular thing to say in mobile nowadays, and it's not a popular thing to say to funders and stuff. But we need models that pay for that. And we're very lucky across our business, 50% of our revenue comes from subscribers because readers pay us to read our content. The other 50% comes from advertisers, and we're very happy for that. But if you have those principles and you say, okay, that's what we do as a group, what does that look like for a daily app? And actually the very useful thing we did, first of all, was say, okay, what does it not look like? What would a daily app called Espresso not be? And it's not this. This is actually in America, but I'm sure it's the same here. If you go and grab a coffee and you say, hey, can I have a coffee? You get an endless choice. There's 1,000 different coffees you can have. Actually, you know, sometimes browsing the internet feels like that, right? I want to read the news. There are 1,000 articles. My Facebook feed has 1,000 things. There's a million things going on. Actually, that's overwhelming. And actually, part of the value of The Economist is we sort through that stuff. Our editors tell you, hey, this is what we think is important. And the second big trend in coffee and in media is about personalization. In a world where, you know, you can have your coffee any way you want it, and you go to a news site, and if you're only interested in news about Liverpool Football Club, that's the only news you're going to get. And that's great for football. It's kind of okay for music and for films. But if you're talking about politics, if you're talking about economics, if you're talking about global affairs, there's an argument that says, actually, the editorial team need to think about, well, what's important? And we're going to put that in front of you, and we're going to say, wherever you live in the world, it's important you understand what's happening in Brazil right now. Okay. So we're not about personalization. We're about choosing content that is most relevant for you and most relevant for you today. So that's the principle. What does the app look like? Actually, very simple. Here we are. This is the home screen of the Espresso app. It's not rocket science. It's very straightforward. There are 5 articles of this is what we think you should know about today. There's one article after that that gives an overview of everything going on in the world, a couple of 100 words. And then at the very bottom, there's a few currency exchange numbers and a few market rates. The articles themselves, 150 to 200 words, quite a lot shorter than a magazine article. Magazine articles are normally 400 to 600 words. And here at the bottom, you see it says 1 of 7. As you read, that number goes, right? So you can tick them off. You start the morning, you have 7 pieces to read. As you go, you say, yeah, done it, I've done it, I've done it. You get a beautiful advert for Microsoft Cloud, product I recommend, which is a full-page ad, really nice environment. Ad blockers, obviously, it's not ad-served, so there's no ad blockers. Very high engagement rate. And then when you're finished, nice message, hey, that's it, you're done for the day, off you go. It's that feeling of finishability that the print edition gives you, but in a mobile app. And as you can see, technically, this is not a complicated app, right? There's no whizzy, exciting bells and interactivity. This is about getting the content, the right content, to people at the time of day that they need and as quickly as possible. So, as I say, it's a premium shot. We made the decision, it's kind of unpopular, that you have to pay for this. So if you're a subscriber to The Economist, fantastic, you get it for free. If you're not, it's £2.50 a month. You have 1 story each day for free. And we publish it 3 times around the world. So we publish it in London, New York, and Singapore. So if you wake up in London or indeed in Moscow, the stories were written and published by the Singapore team in the middle of the night. And in London, published in New York, and New York publishes in Singapore. Which is a big change, right? It's a big change for a publication that until now has been working on a weekly basis. So how do we do that? And again, you know, this is, as you've seen from that product, it's not about the technical aspects of the product development. The really core part of our development process was in terms of the editorial. So we were 6 months from start to finish. The first 3 months of that development process, we didn't write any code at all. We spent 3 months sitting with the editorial team trying to understand how can we publish a weekly app on a daily basis or 3 times a day. How do we do that? We got the workflow mapped out, the total tested it, we ran it for a month without sharing it with the world. Then we spent 3 months developing the app. And actually by that point, the development was simple because we knew exactly what the product had to do. And we knew, perhaps more importantly, exactly what the product didn't have to do. So we spent a lot of time not putting in features, which sounds like a strange thing for a developer to do. But actually our product managers were very happy and very serious about not putting in features. So after launch, we did 12 updates in the first few months, and we added in some features. So we added in social sharing, we added in a link to the Economist website, but we're still very feature poor. It's about purely putting that content in front of people. Was it a success? We think so. Now these numbers are kind of strange. You know, I'm here partly to explain the success of The Economist. I've just been on after Facebook, who I think we said had 1.1 billion users this morning. We don't have 1 billion users. But we had 1 million downloads in a year. And we have 200,000 people every week reading it. In the world of publishing, that's quite a good number. That's the equivalent number of downloads every week that we have in the UK print edition. So it's, you know, it's another country. 85% of those downloads are existing subscribers, which means we're adding value to people who already like our product. That means 15% of those downloads are paying £2.50 a month, and they're new people that didn't used to read us. We're also doing very well with advertisers because they like the fact that you can't block the ad. They like the fact the click rate or the tap rate on the ad is about 2.6%, not 0.002, but 2.6%. So it's about 100 times higher than a banner ad on a website. And because it's been such a success, we're now publishing on Saturdays as well. So we're really happy with that. And it's very profitable, it's driving our business forward. But more importantly, it was those 5 pillars we talked about. Because actually that was what changed the mindset of the business, and it changed how we approach product development. And it opened us up to being able to develop other products. So we've, in the last 9 months, released the Economist Global Business Review. Because when you look at those 5 filters, and it said, you know, we don't have to be in print, we don't have to be weekly, we can be daily. When you look at those 5 filters, it also doesn't say you have to be in English. So then we said, okay, we'll publish in English and Chinese at the same time. So that's an app in Chinese and English where Chinese business people can learn English by translating between the 2 articles. And Economist Films, because those 5 pillars didn't say it has to be a written article. They said, as long as you stick to those principles, it's okay. So we're developing films. We've hired a whole load of directors and producers working with Economist Editorial to make 15 to 20-minute documentaries. So that's kind of it. It's changed our approach to product development. It's changed how we tackle things. And really, the core to the product development piece, going back to this morning, you know, everyone was talking about what's the next trend? How do I get VC funding? How do I get ahead of the next trend? Actually, I think all of that is crazy. It's not about that. It's about choose the ingredients. What ingredients is your company really, really good at that no one else can do, that puts you way ahead of everybody else? And once you really understand that, actually the product development and the product definition almost writes itself, which is what we found with The Economist. We had to wake up and understand what it was that we really did. And once we had that, Espresso was easy. And that's it. Any questions? Yeah.
Thank you so much for your presentation. It's nice to hear somebody from media at this conference. You said media can be personal. It's close to you. You wake up with your mobile phone, blah blah. But you didn't. You decided not to create a personal kind of publication. You make one choice for everyone. But do you analyze what people are doing it? What kind of information you gather from this application to you, and does it affect any editorial metrics or stuff like that? Thank you.
It's a really good question. So we have all the metrics from Espresso, of course. We know which articles people are reading from the main website. We also know which Economist articles people are reading. We have a strange business model at The Economist, which means that we have our CEO and we have our editor-in-chief. The editor doesn't report to the CEO, so the editor can do whatever they want. So we have it written in our constitution that they cannot be forced to write things because it's commercially beneficial. So really, the editorial people write what they think is important, which can be a headache when they write things about, you know, our advertisers that I don't like, or when they write things that we don't want them to say, but they write it based on that. So they do use that data from the audience. They look at which articles are doing well. They look at, you know, for example, we might write more or less about a particular election if we think there's some interest in it, but we don't use that data to take our point of view. So, you know, everybody in the world is talking about Trump. We're not going to write about Trump any more or less just because people are interested in it. We write because we think it's important or not. Does that answer the question? Yeah. Yeah, I don't. I work in the marketing side, and I do everything I can to put our advertising next to content that we know is going to be appealing to our audience, and we work with our clients to develop, you know, we do native content or branded content with our clients, and we work very hard with them to make sure it's stuff that we know our audience likes. But editorial, yeah, editorial will do their own thing.